Right. Goal for this episode: try not come across as a complete maniac. Hello and welcome to the very first, possibly only, episode of the Knitting Vicariously podcast. My name is Caroline. I'm found more commonly across Instagram and Ravelry as DUNDERKNIT, and I'll put that on the screen for you here. I am a knitter living in London, and contrary to what my stash wall may have you believe, I do not knit for a living. However, I do greatly enjoy supporting many of the makers, the dyers, the designers that we have within this industry, and my stash wall is definitely testament to that. And in fact, celebrating all these people is part of the reason that I wanted to start a podcast in the first place, because we are surrounded by such fantastic platforms as things like Instagram and Ravelry that really showcase the new amazing things that people in our community are doing, whether it's new patterns, new magazines, publications, new yarns, new colorways. There are so many amazing sources of inspiration around us in the community today, and so it takes every fibre of our being when we see these things and have flashes of, oh, that's what I want to make next, not to throw everything that we've been working on aside and start casting on with new wild abandon. I, for one, am not always successful at not casting things aside, but certainly it's not always possible, right? So when inspiration strikes, we're not always able to capitalise on it. So whether it is we don't have the right yarns or the yardage to hand, maybe the weight of yarn isn't quite right, or maybe the pattern hasn't been released yet and they're just teasing it on social media, or maybe you have obligation knitting that you're in the midst of, or test knitting, or you've got a gift that's only a few days overdue. Or maybe it's your environment. So you're sitting in the office having a look through Instagram one lunchtime and you're just not able to there and then wind up that skein of yarn that's been sitting in your handbag waiting for the perfect project. I don't know anyone who's done that. And you can't really just turn to your co-worker Kevin and say, can I borrow your knees and use them as a makeshift Swift so that I can cast this up, because you risk being labelled inappropriate. But it's never happened to me. Or maybe you have children. Maybe you have children and you're taking 2 minutes behind a locked bathroom door just to yourself to help you unwind, while scenes from Lord of the Flies are playing out reminiscent across your living room floor. But for whatever reason, we're just not able to cast on there and then. And so then in comes this idea of knitting vicariously, as I like to call it, which is vicariously, just for anyone who's unsure, means to experience something through someone else. So by watching, by hearing, seeing someone else experiencing it and experiencing that pleasure, albeit at a slight distance. And I'm being creative with the definition here. So I see vicarious as also meaning I can knit vicariously through yarns. If I see beautiful yarns and I imagine the project that I want to knit with those, I mentally get myself into a headspace of thinking, oh, that feels so exciting and I could do that. Likewise, pattern magazines. So if I see a new pattern that's come out, oh, now that helps me knit vicariously. Essentially, I just lead a very imaginative, but slightly just boring day-to-day life, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But I don't think I'm the only one that does it, and at least I hope I'm not the only one that does it. So maybe through this we'll be able to build a community of people who all think in a similar way and enjoy knitting vicariously through all these things around us that inspire us on a regular basis. But yes, I'm guessing the majority of people who are watching this either know me in real life, hi mum, or perhaps know me through the internet and we've spoken a few times, whether it's through Instagram or Ravelry. But if for whatever reason you've stumbled across this and you have no idea who I am or why I'm talking at you, let me try and help you with at least one of those two questions. The why part, you turned this on. You have no one but yourself to blame. But in terms of who I am, let me tell you a few things about me. Number one, I am both Scottish and a natural redhead, although I'm routinely dismissed as being neither of those things. I was born in Scotland. I grew up in initially the Scottish borders and then moved up to Edinburgh, but I moved down to London to go to university when I was about 18, which means I've been down here for about 17 years, and that's a terrifying number. But 1870. Yeah, that's right. Oh, crumbs. Oi. But yes, I've been in and around London. I moved abroad for a little bit, came back, but essentially I've been down here since then. And it does mean that my accent is a little bit different from the kind of standard Scottish accent that you might be familiar with. Certainly I do have some people that kind of recognise it and call it out, which is always lovely. I do also have some people who think I'm Canadian and Irish and Australian, and I mean essentially I get it put into the not from round these parts pigeonhole. So yeah, but definitely Scottish, and also, as I mentioned, a natural redhead. So although I will say in recent years I've taken to enhancing it slightly, and the reason for that is I did not go through the taunts and the name calling when I was 17 only to get to my early to mid 30s and finally be able to appreciate, you know, the skin that I'm in, the hair that I have, to walk into the office one day and have someone say, "What, you're not a redhead, you're a brunette." I was quite grumpy that day. Quite grumpy. I had to take myself off for a coffee. Number 2. I'm quite a sweary person. I curse a fair bit in my day-to-day language, and I say that now because my intention going forward is to be open, authentic, transparent and honest with this podcast, very much me, and I am conscious that does mean that a few potentially unpalatable words are going to crop up if you're offended by swearing, if it's just not your thing. And I want to mention that now because from here on out I'm going to be using my natural language. I do appreciate and understand that some people might be watching this with children, or podcasts are something that they watch as a family, or it's just maybe not your bag at all, in which case I say thank you so much for watching so far. This probably isn't going to be the podcast for you. I really don't want to be held responsible if, you know, you do have children and those beautiful, bright-eyed, innocent children of yours turn round with their loving faces full of wonder and say, "Mummy, Daddy, what's a total fucking shit show?" Yeah. Sorry. Number 3. I've been knitting for about 8.5, 9 years, I think. I started knitting when my friend was pregnant and I decided I wanted to knit something for her baby. I learned pretty much through watching YouTube videos, and it does mean I've got a slightly sort of combination style. I am an English style knitter. I do knit with my right hand predominantly, and it's somewhere between kind of throwing and flicking. I think because originally I was taught, I'm going to use the word taught very loosely, shown with a limited amount of attention span by my nana and my mum when I was little and growing up, and I think I made like the world's tiniest scarf for a teddy bear, and I have a vague recollection of like a blue mohair thing that was kind of contorted into a teddy bear's jumper. I mean, child of the 80s, so all the mohair back well before it was cool again, but when they taught me the kind of pit knitting style, and so I think it's kind of a bit of a hangover from that, but yeah, it's definitely not your kind of lovely fluid continental or quite as flicky as I would like it to be, although I'm trying to work on getting my speed up obviously over time. But yes, been knitting for a fair old time now, and predominantly YouTube is my go-to place for learning new techniques, even today when I come across new things. So very much a child of the modern knitting renaissance, if you like. Number 4. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about where I am. So I am in West London. I live here with my cat Hobbs, as in Calvin and Hobbs. He is a tiger striped tabby cat. He is a rescue, and to be honest, if you see him either here or on my Instagram pages, you're going to see more of him there than you would do in real life, because he is a very, very nervous puss. He, as I mentioned, was a rescue cat. He's very nervous around new people. The vast majority of my friends have never really seen him properly in real life. They'll kind of come in to visit and they'll just see his tail and kind of his arse as he shoots out the door, frantically worried about, there's someone new in the house. He does quite like my mum, but that's mostly because she comes and stays and feeds him more than I normally do if I'm ever away. But for the most part, he is quite scared around new people, bless him. But he is very, very cute. We've had him for about 4.5, 5 years, and we adopted him from the Blue Cross I say we, so I actually got him with my now ex-husband. I went through a divorce at the tail end of last year, beginning of this year, and I've spoken about it a little bit on my social media. I'm probably not going to go into much detail here. I'm certainly not going to be airing any dirty laundry because, quite honestly, there isn't any to air. What it does mean though is I've used it as a bit of an opportunity this year to consider just a bit of a change of outlook, and maybe an opportunity to do some things that I wouldn't necessarily have been in a position to do in previous circumstances. So I went back to Edinburgh earlier on this year in March to visit EYF, the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and absolutely loved that. And then the other big one for me this year is I'm actually going to be going to Rhinebeck later on this month, which I am tremendously excited about, and meeting a whole load of people in person that I've only really ever spoken to through the internet. So that's going to be so much fun. But essentially the whole thing for me was I wanted to take some more time this year to be brave. And I said right back at the start of the year on some of my social media channels that brave was going to be my word for this year. And so doing things like going to all these new festivals, going abroad and starting a podcast are all those things that help me to, I guess, just kind of feel as though I'm really moving forward. And as I say, I don't necessarily think I'm going to spend a huge amount of time talking about it here in the podcast, but I do think it's really helpful when you're going through something like this and you see other people who are similar or in similar kind of circles or on Instagram, on Ravelry, who are talking about this, because I think similar to things like mental health stigma and so on, it can be so helpful to share stories when you're going through things like this with people who are around you who perhaps don't see it or don't know how to ask for some of those things, know how to ask for help in that sense. So I know I found it incredibly useful when I saw other people going through similar things and they were quite transparent about it, both the good days and the bad days, and I just want to make sure that I'm trying to do the same, and if that can help then all the better. And then number 5, and I was racking my brains and the only thing I can think of for this, and it is fairly random, so I'm really bad at cutting bread straight. I was thinking about this because I had my lunch immediately prior to this and I made an absolute hash of a bagel. I was cutting halfway down and there's something about it where I'll cut partway down and it'll kind of go, I don't know what it is. I don't know how I do it every single time. I'm being really cautious. I'm going slowly, but there's just something about it where I'll cut down and then just whack. Or I'll end up with a really thin slice. So my toaster always just has these 2 slices that are kind of perfectly straight and then wonky. I don't know what it is. I wish I did. I feel like, I'm not sure I can really be a grown-up without some of these essential life skills, so not quite sure where that leaves me. But essentially, in summary to all of that, I am a Scottish, red-headed cat owner who lives on her own in West London, knits a whole bunch, and is physically incapable of cutting bread straight, which, I mean, if that isn't the world's most awkward Tinder profile, I really don't know what is. Oh God. Yeah. If for whatever reason you're still here, and I don't know why you would be, I guess I'll start talking a little bit about knitting. So I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll split the podcast into 2 sections. I'll have an actual knitting section where we'll talk about finished objects, work in progress, all the kind of more recognisable elements of some of the other knitting podcasts out there, and then the second section which is more the vicarious knitting part, and that's going to be the stash acquisition. It's going to be new patterns, essentially kind of plans for the future and things around that, and I'm going to use the word plans in that section fairly loosely. I am someone who, I love getting inspired with this stuff. I love seeing what the potential is. I don't necessarily always follow through, so bear that in mind. I'm going to see how this pans out over the next few episodes, hopefully, if anyone cares, and just kind of see how we go. So before I make a start on FOs, I guess I should probably tell you what shawl I'm wearing. So this is the Vaulted Shawl by Sue Stratford. I recently was part of the test knit for the shawl, and it is, if I hold it up properly, the most wonderful lightning bolt in this crazy day glow yellow. So this is Madelinetosh Edison Bulb in her MCN fingering, so that's an 80-10-10 fingering weight yarn. I used maybe, 1/3 of a skein for that, definitely not much at all. The main colour here is SpunRightRound in her sock base, so that again is an 80/20 sock base merino nylon, and that is the jump rope colour. And then lastly over here we have this dark sort of mottled purple colour. That's actually a hand dye that I was playing around with a while ago. I don't, as I mentioned, I'm not someone who knits for a living, I'm not a hand dyer. This is very much me playing around with some, I think it was Kool-Aid or acid dyes back in the day, and I just happened to get a colour that fit really nicely with some of the speckles. So let me hold it up so you can see. But yeah, it is just, it's such a fantastic pattern. It is actually intarsia, so this is my first intarsia project, and for all that at the beginning there was a little bit of yarn cake manoeuvring in a sort of find a lady type style. I did find that actually, particularly as the rows got a bit longer, I got pretty used to it, but if I hold it up, you should be able to see here where I've been wrapping the yarns. So with each kind of change as you come to them, you wrap the yarns in order to sort of hold them together, if you like. But it is genuinely such a brilliant pattern. She also has the bolt sweater, which is a very David Bowie-esque kind of lightning bolt down the front of that sweater, which is also something that I have on my needles as a whip, and I really must get back to. So yes, Voltage Shawl by Sue Stratford, who is Knitting and Gin on Instagram and has the most adorable sets of knitting and gin pins you will ever see. So in terms of finished objects, the first thing that I really wanted to share was a Rhinebeck sweater for this year. So I have mentioned that I'm going to Rhinebeck later on this month. I do think maybe we should have some sort of drinking game around it. I am probably going to mention Rhinebeck quite a few times in this, but then, I mean, I definitely can't do this if I'm editing, because I will be absolutely shit-faced by the end of this. So yeah, forget I said anything. Anyway, I'm going to Rhinebeck later on this month, and as part of that, one of the sweaters that I knit to head out there is the Tecumseh sweater, and I'm going to put a picture of it here of me wearing it just so you can see what it's like on. But I mean, if you have watched knitting podcasts recently, if you follow Caitlin Hunter, who is Boyland Knitworks on Instagram, basically if you're in this community and you have eyes and you've been around for the last 8 months or so, you will have seen this pattern. So without further ado, this is my Tecumseh sweater, and this is knit out of Madelinetosh. So the main colour is her MCN sport weight, so that's 80-10-10, so 80% merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, in the smokestack colourway, which is this gorgeous kind of smoky grey, almost slightly green in some lights colourway. And then for the contrast colours, we have DK Twist in carbon dating and in toner cartridge. Carbon dating is this lovely sort of golden colour. It's not brown. I have many people within my knit group who have a great laugh at my expense. Put that around there, there we go, feels more colloquial, because they think that I constantly knit with brown, and it's gold. I will have you believe it's gold. And then we've got this almost sort of slightly darker, almost slightly mottled blackish grey colour, which is the toner cartridge, which I love. Now, for all that these are different weights, so as I mentioned, we've got sport weight as the main colour and DK as the two contrast colours, they're actually similar enough for you to be able to hold them together to do colour work without really any problems at all. I knit pretty much all of this on a 4.5mm needle. I did use a 4mm needle for the ribbing, just so you can see a little bit of the difference that is there. And I think the main colour, I used about 4.5 skeins for that, so it is 250 yards in the Madelinetosh Sport, MCN Sport rather, and I think I used maybe half a skein for the contrast colour in the carbon dating, in the gold colour, gold, and then maybe 1.5 skeins for the feathers, the toner cartridge there. But no, just a really nice knit. And I think if you're looking at this, you've probably already spotted the main thing that I did differently with my version, which is I actually separated for the sleeves quite a bit higher than she has you separate in the pattern. So if you look at the standard pattern, she has you separate for the sleeves. Let me just hold that properly, just here underneath the second round of colour work. And what I would say is I knit another of Caitlin Hunter's patterns. I knit the Nanilchik Swancho, all the ends, earlier on the year for the Ravelrry, and that again is a swancho, so it has that kind of dropped arm side that where the arms separate just underneath or just round about your elbow. And while it's so cozy and I love my version of it, it does impede arm movement somewhat. And bearing in mind, as I mentioned, that I'm taking this to Rhinebeck drink, one of the big things there is obviously that if you have a deeper arm side, so if your armpit is going to be slightly lower down here, it is going to impede my ability to hold tote bags under my arm. And between you and me, and everyone else that knows me, I am intending to come back with quite a few tote bags from Rhinebeck, so I need to make sure that I'm going to be able to carry them all on a day. This was my thinking, not so dumb now. But certainly for me, it was also a shape thing. So I love the look of the kind of slouchier version of it and having that kind of much more comfortable fit. But for me, I knew the shape was going to be more flattering if I had sort of slightly slimmer arms and then a longer sort of more flowy body, which is really what I've gone for here. So yeah, that is my Tecumseh sweater. I'm really pleased with it. I will show you my floats in the interest of transparency. So here we go from the inside. I'm not going to turn it all inside out, that would be a bit unwieldy, but these are certainly my floats. You can even see some ends that have been woven in there. Really, I'm just getting my dirty laundry out. Oh, and actually to that point, so not dirty laundry, grim. No, in terms of the floats, I actually posted on my Instagram a couple of weeks back my technique for catching my floats. So when I am knitting colourwork and I'm going along, if I have a long strand of one particular colour that needs to run behind the front knitting, I will catch them by just twisting the yarns in a certain way. And I posted about it on Instagram. If you're interested, by all means go over. It is in my Instagram highlights under, I think it's colourwork tips, I think I called it. But essentially, if you're not sure what catching floats are, if I show you, let me find one here. Here we go. So just on here, you can see these little V's where I've used the main colour to catch this longer floating strand of the darker contrast colour behind. So if I turn it back round, you'll see it's on a point where it's in between these two, the points of these two feathers. And because there's no contrast colour that's actually sewn, that's knitted rather, in these stitches in between, you would have one really long strand of the contrast colour that runs behind. Catching your floats just means that you're actually trapping that, so it's a much shorter strand that's hanging out, and that just means that when you go to put it on, it's not going to catch on fingers or earrings or noses or whatever else. So general rule of thumb is if you're going to be knitting a stretch for more than I think about 5 stitches, maybe 6, you want to try and catch your floats every 5 or 6 stitches just in case. So yeah, if you are curious, have a look at my Instagram and you'll be able to see a little bit more about the technique that I use for that. But other than that, that's Tecumseh. Looking forward to wearing this at Rhinebeck drink. So as I move on now to whips, the first thing I'm going to show you is hiding in my lovely Tane Casey bag. So Tane Casey is an amazing bag maker that I found actually through someone else, and I can't remember who it was who posted about her on Instagram, but she has some of the most incredible project bags, really chunky, decent sized project bags. I think she's either in the US or Canada, and I can't remember which, and I'm really sorry, but I will put her Etsy shop details on the screen for you to check her out. Now, this is one of her large sweater bags. The cat hair doesn't come with the bag. I'm so sorry. Everything that I have in this house has cat hair in it. It's just part and parcel of living with me. But it's just the most gorgeous bag. It is black and gold, and I've got a bit of a thing for black and gold at the moment, but even more than that, this is an Alice in Wonderland themed print. So if I turn it round, you have, so there's the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, there's the Throne Room, you can see that there's a white rabbit on there somewhere. It's such a gorgeous print, and I really couldn't resist it. So she has so many gorgeous bags. I please do recommend going and having a look and finding something that you love, because I'm sure that you absolutely shall. But living in here is my Stalactite sweater. Stalactite is a pattern, and I will pop it up here for you to see, from Lane Magazine. Lane Magazine issue 4, so issue 6 was released just in the last few weeks, but issue 4 is the one where this pattern is in there, and I am knitting this also for Rhinebeck drink. So let me hold this up so you can see. this is where I am at the moment, and it is beautifully wrinkled, which is tremendously helpful when it comes to showing you how far I've got. And I am reasonably far down the body, so I think in the main pattern they have you knit, I think, 7 of the different little stalactite rows, and I've just finished my 7th one. I'm probably going to knit 8 of them just because I'm not particularly tall. I'm 5'8", but certainly when holding this up, trying it on, it sat a little bit high on my hip at the moment, so I want it to just go a little bit further, and then I'll make a start on the ribbing. But yes, this is, I'm knitting this out of RAVELRY. Going to try and pronounce my German pronunciation, which is a merino yarn. It is 100% merino, but it's probably one of the more kind of rustic woolen spun merinos that's out there at the moment. I'm going to hold it up and see if you can see. But yeah, it's, I tell you what, even better. Let me just grab a skein. Here we go. So this is RAVELRY, and this is their merino. It's really, really lovely. It's quite, it's not sort of tweedy, but it's certainly got a lovely bit of variegation to it, and it is, let me see if I can hold it. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's definitely squishy with a little bit of sort of crispness to it. So this is the medium grey colour, and the main body is obviously in the medium grey, and then I'm using the undyed colour as the stalactite stripes. But it is, let me read from here, sourced and spun in Bavaria. It is a 2-ply woolen spun, and you get around about 220 metres, so I'm going to guess about 260-ish yards, 250-ish yards. Conversion is not my strong point, there or thereabouts. And this is a really funny one, right? So it says it can be knit at a gauge with a 2.75 to 3.75 millimetre needle. Now, 2.75 is a US size 2. 3.75 is a US size 5. Already, like, 1, quite a range, but 2, for a DK to like worsted weight yarn, that feels sturdy. And in fact, so I am knitting this on a 4mm needle. I'm just going to hold it up so you can see. What you might be able to see just here is, do this daintily, so up here there's a sort of slightly fluffier section, and the reason for that is I'm not a very good swatcher, confessions. I'm someone who tends to cast on with the knowledge that I'm going to measure as I go, and that means I might have to rip it out and start over. And for some reason, my brain thinks it's more acceptable to do that than it is to take 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes out of my day and just knit a little swatch, because I am that impatient. I'm ridiculous, I have no logic, but I'm sticking to it. So what I did was I cast on, I knit for a bit, I joined the neckband, I joined it in the round rather, I knit a few rows after I joined in the neck at the front, and then decided that I was going to put it onto waste yarn and to block it. And when I did it the first time, because this is not the first time, no, I realised the gauge that I was getting with this yarn was dramatically different from what I was looking for in the pattern. I think the pattern calls for 19, 20 stitches per inch. I will find out, I'll put it on the screen at the bottom here, but certainly not what I was getting. I was getting quite a few stitches fewer than that, which obviously meant I would end up with a much larger sweater. And sure enough, I did some maths around it. I looked at the stitch count that I was going to be knitting at its widest point, and looked at that versus the gauge, and realised that the size 48, I think, that I was knitting was going to end up significantly bigger, and I was going to end up with a sweater that I was going to be swimming in. So I then looked at my gauge, because I did still look at my gauge, even though I didn't swatch for it, and I did some maths and worked out that instead of the 48 sweater, what I really needed was to cast on the size 40 sweater, which I'm fine with, because fewer stitches means it goes faster. I'm definitely not a size 40 chest, but my gauge meant that that was going to work out as being knitting a size equivalent to a 48-inch chest, which was going to give me the required ease that I needed. So essentially, all good. But then when I was casting on for the second time, because slightly burned, but I learned, it's fine, I then just made sure to check my swatch and block it as I went. So obviously started knitting, knitted in the round, got to the neckband, knit a few more rows, and then, as I say, put it onto waste yarn and blocked it. And what you will then be able to see, hopefully, is up here I've got a lovely kind of bloomed, filled in set of stitches, and then from here on down it's just a little bit more kind of rigid where the oil is still left in, so there's still natural lanolin that's left in here, which is why it's a bit crunchy and a bit crispy to knit with, but it does bloom really lovely. In fact, maybe if I show you the other side you'll be able to see this a little bit more clearly, where up to here is where I've blocked it, and then from here onwards that's the wool in its original state. So yes, essentially I'm a terrible swatcher, but I do measure things as I go, and it usually kind of almost sort of works out for the best. Basically, do as the patterns say, not as I do, unless you really want to. The only other thing to say about this, so obviously I've got a little bit left to go on the body, and then I need to pick up the sleeves. The collar is actually, it's a turtleneck collar in the original pattern. I'm in two minds. I might go turtleneck. I might also just go with a rolled collar, a folded hem rather at the collar. Just knit a ribbed collar and fold it in on itself and hem that down. So I'll see how I go. I know that, so when this yarn has been blocked, it does soften up a lot. It does feel a lot more like a merino than more of a sort of rustic yarn as it does in the skein. But I do have a bit of a princess neck, and on the whole I love knitting with more rustic wools, I love wearing more rustic wools, but anything that is kind of up and around my neck, I do just tend to get a little bit of an itch there. So I'll see how I go, I'll see how I get on, but I love the look of the turtleneck, so I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to do that as well. But hopefully next time you see this I will be a little bit further along. This is probably the project that I'm working on the most at the moment, so I'm anticipating having a fair bit more of this done next time we speak. So yeah, stalactite. So another project that I have on my needles at the moment is the Cardamom Coffee Hat, also by Caitlin Hunter. It's a bit of a Caitlin Hunter heavy episode, but this is actually the second hat of this pattern that I've been knitting. I did knit another one and finish that quite recently. I will pop a picture of it here. That shows, in fact, this hat here. This is the finished Cardamom Coffee Hat. I say finished, I just need to attach this popper here so that I can put the pom-pom on the top, and the pom-pom looks like this. So, as if by magic, hey, I will have myself a fully pommed up hat, and it's a gorgeous pattern. So it's knit with fingering weight yarn, and what I will say is both this version and my work in progress version are knit entirely from scraps and leftovers from other projects. So I'll start with this version because it's kind of finished, although I do want to get the pom-pom attached sooner rather than later. So this is knit in Madelinetosh Tosh Merino Light in the Thunderstorm colourway. And then we have the sort of mauvish pink. This is a Tweedy yarn, and this is from the Wool Barn. This is her Tweed sock in the Wilderberry colourway. And then lastly, there is just this strip that runs through here in a grey, again, Tosh Merino Light. And this is the charcoal colour. All of them, as I mentioned, scraps and leftovers. I think, to be honest, even the main colour, this will probably take less than half a skein if you're looking for a project that's really adept at using up some of those leftover skeins that you have from other projects. But I'm quite excited. I do love a pom-pom. This is a faux fur pom-pom that I have from, I think it's COWLINGCOUNTRYCRAFTS on Etsy. I'll see if I can find them and link them in here below and in the show notes, which I'll put some notes down at the bottom of the episode here just to point you in the right direction for things. But yes, really great pattern, and let me show you now the version that I have in progress. So this is the version that I'm working on now, and again, a lot of these yarns are, all of these yarns in fact, are Tosh Merino Light, because that is something I have a lot of leftovers of. And if I hold it up, you'll be able to see, blowing out slightly, let's hold it back here. So we've got Silver Fox as the main colour here, and then the main contrast colour, let me just spread it out a little bit so you can see, is Mandala, which is this amazing kind of bluish green with purple tones in there as well. And then the strip that runs through here is their Mica colourway, which is this gorgeous kind of sky blue. And in fact, Let me hold these up side by side so you can see. So one thing that's worth mentioning actually, so pretty much all of my projects I tend to knit on COWGOOs. I have an interchangeable set. Well, it started as an interchangeable set, and since then I've brought so many replacement cables and needles to start new projects, and whips when one was being used elsewhere, that I probably have enough now to fill multiple interchangeable sets. But certainly for hats, this hat in particular, I actually really enjoy using the Haya 16-inch circulars, either the standard steel needles or the sharps. Steels are probably my preferred ones, just because the way that I knit, the pointiness of the Haya sharps tends to be a bit too pointy, but certainly I use them fairly interchangeably for hats. But the cable is I guess flexible enough that they're actually really great for hats, whereas the COWGOO shorter cables tend to be a little bit more structured and without quite so much give. So yeah, just my preference. These are the 3 yarns that I'm using. So as I mentioned, I have Silver Fox on this side, which is blowing out massively. If I hold it back here, that's a bit better. So Silver Fox, and then Mandala, which is again, it's this kind of bluey purple, and then Mica. Those are the 3 together. Needle sizes, just so you know, the brim is knit on 2.75mm, which is a US size 2, and then the main body of the hat is knit on 3.25mm, which is a US size 3. And is it a US size 3? Or a US size 2.5? It's a 3, because a 3mm is a 2.5. Oh crumbs, these needle sizes get me so confused. But yes, anyway. So yeah, really fantastic pattern. I've really enjoyed knitting this, both this version and the previous one. I have to confess, I'm someone who, the original pattern in itself is not always enough to convince me that I have to drop everything and knit it, and sometimes it takes someone else knitting it to make me really get it and see the potential that's there. And in this instance, it was actually Kristen of Wool and Vine Yarns who knit the most beautiful version of this about, I think maybe Christmas last year, thereabouts, maybe slightly later, in this kind of amazing brownish red sort of maroon colourway, really dark, gorgeous set of colours, and then obviously signature mauve as one of the contrasts, and then a sort of creamy colour I think as well. But that definitely got my attention and made me want to cast on these. So thank you, Kristen, you helped me to knit vicariously. See what I did there. Oh geez. I neglected to mention up front that my cardamom coffee hat is living in my Little Grey Girl bag. So this is a bag by Gemma, who is Little Grey Girl on Instagram. Gemma is a staple of a lot of the yarn shows that we have here in the UK, and it's always so lovely to go and see her and see what materials and fabrics she has in. This I happened to get from her, let me just pop that there. I happened to get from her a couple of years ago at Fibre East, and I think, Gemma, you might just have brought out the fabric for that particular show. I love this fabric, it's so fun, and Gemma's bags are always wonderful. So yes, always brings a smile to my face when I see this. And the last whip that I'm going to share with you today is in a bag that I kind of almost don't want to show you, because she doesn't make very many of these and I sort of want them all for myself. But this is a bag by a lady called BETSYMAKES, who is BETSYMAKES on Instagram and her Etsy store. But it's just gorgeous. She hand dyes the fabric for these bags, and I have them in 3 different colours already, I think. So I've got this beautiful sort of mauvish one, I have a pink one that has speckles and spatters on it, and I have a beautiful brown sort of brown one. I know, hilarious knitting group. It is a genuine brown bag, but it's beautiful, with sort of coffee cappuccino speckles on it. But yes, it's such a well-made bag. It's such a good size for sweater projects. It's got this amazingly beautiful rose gold zip along the top here too, and the fabric inside is lovely and soft. So really enjoy these bags too. But living inside here is my Zweig pullover, also by Caitlin Hunter. I told you it was going to be a Caitlin Hunter heavy episode today, and I'll pop the standard image in there again. If you've seen podcasts, if you have eyes, you know this sweater. Everyone and their dog has knitted it. Oh God, has someone knitted this for a dog? I would quite like to see that. That would be quite cute. Anyway, this is my Zweig. and you will see I've got a fair bit left to go on this. This has been on the needles for a little while now, and I will confess it's not one of my Rhinebeck drink sweaters. This is one that I wasn't totally sure how warm or cold Rhinebeck was going to be this year. Ultimately, this is one that I've put aside as being some knitting that I know I want to do in time for maybe winter and into spring, but certainly I'm in love with these colours, you guys. They are just stunning. Both of these yarns are on the Geronimo sock base from the Hey Sister Yarn Co ladies. So this is the gold colour at the top here is Drizzle, and then the blue colour is Can't Take the Sky From Me. But it has these gorgeous little nuggets, these speckles, don't know if you can see, that are the same as the gold colour up here, and even Drizzle has these gorgeous speckles in it. Let me hold it up. It's got these lovely little red speckles that you see occasionally. Oh, the colours are to die for. Honestly, Tabby, Rachel, the ladies behind Say Sister Yarn Co, between having 7 children between you, just that and running a dyeing business with such amazing colours and having a podcast and homeschooling, I literally do not know how you do it. But at the very, very least, your dyeing is exceptional. So really, really love these ladies and the amazing yarns that they produce. And so delighted to be pairing them together in this Zweig. And I do think perhaps the colours are a little bit unexpected, but I kind of love it. And so this is being knit on my beloved Chowgoos. It is knit on 3.75mm needles, which is a US size 5. And in terms of the yarns, I don't have Can't Take the Sky With Me to hand, but I do have Drizzle. And that is Drizzle. There. It's just so pretty. I love it. This is one of my favourite colours at the moment. I'm knitting an awful lot of golds. Just so pretty. So yes, I am anticipating I will move back to this as my main project, probably post Rhinebeck. I'm just at the point now where I'm starting to do the cables on the body. So if I hold it up, you will be able to see I've separated for the sleeves, and I'm just moving on now to the texture that you get here. So the little crossed cables on the body of the sweater. I am looking to do those because I just thought they make the look of the sweater kind of so complete. And I love what the versions that some people have done where it's just plain, but I also just really wanted to have the texture here just to make the gold really pop. So that is Zweig. I think I mentioned it, but this is Hey Sister Yarn Co on their Geronimo sock base, and that is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 400 yards to a skein. I know the ladies do have updates that they post around on Instagram, both on their personal accounts and on the Hey Sister Yarn Co account. I would highly, highly recommend following them if you don't already, and making sure that you're able to grab some of this in their next update, because it is just, so special. Love their dyes, love them. So that's it for the actual knitting section of the podcast, but for vicarious knitting, I'm going to start off with a quick stash acquisition. So a couple of days ago, I had decided with a friend of mine to do a little impromptu yarn crawl around the yarn stores of North East London. I was lucky enough to be joined by my friend Elise, and if you're watching, hi Elise. We decided we were going to visit Loop, Knit With Attitude and Wild and Woolly, because Elise had never been to any of these before, and I hadn't been to them in at least a week, so it was always a good excuse to go and visit. And when I was out there, I did see in Knit With Attitude this skein of beauteousness here. This is Hedgehog in their Merino DK in the coral colourway, which is blowing out if I hold it over there, but slightly more I guess similar if I hold it back here, and it is this mix of incredible kind of peachy colours and pinks and just all the neon all the time. Merino DK is obviously 100% superwash DK. It is 115 grams, 200 meters, and it is just super soft, super squishy, super vibrant. This is going to be a beeswax hat, and I will pop the picture up on the screen for you to see. When I am at Rhinebeck Drink, one of the hats that I know I want to be wearing when I'm there is the beeswax hat, and so I thought this would be perfect. I'm not 100% sure if neon coral is quite my colour. Normally, you know, kind of hunting season orange is not a colour that I'd be looking to pull off, but certainly for Rhinebeck, if you can't wear obnoxious colours when you're going to be surrounded by your own people, when can you? That's what I say. But I've just realised something. 2 seconds. I have literally the perfect matching pom-pom. Oh, this is wonderful. So again, this is a faux fur pom-pom from COWLINGCOUNTRYCRAFTS, or County Crafts, I forget, I'll put it here again on the screen. But this is a pom-pom I bought on Etsy early on in the year, and it's perfect. They match wonderfully. It's got these slightly sort of black tips. I don't know if you can see it if I hold it up here. But, and again, it is a popper. So this is the tangerine pom-pom, but yeah, oh, that's going to be perfect. Or I do also have, actually, excuse the rustling, I do also have Autumn Fog, which has kind of got, again, these kind of burnished orange tips, which might look quite nice. Oh, that looks quite nice as well, actually. See, oh, I'm in two minds. What do we think? Do we think we want to go coral? Do we think we want to go grey? Oh, I mean, the amazing thing about all of this is they're interchangeable. And so technically I can do both. Oh, this is magical. I'm very excited now. But yes, beeswax hat with pom-pom, one or other, not both. I won't be walking around Rhinebeck like this, I promise. If for whatever reason I do, feel free to ignore me. Yeah. So that's the beeswax hat. The next piece of vicarious knitting that I'm going to show you is a yarn that I've already shown you once so far in this episode, but in a slightly different guise. So recently I knit the No Frills Pullover by Petite Knit. I knit it in Woolen Vine yarns in her Volca base, which is her MCN fingering base, and Ghost Lace held together, and Ghost Lace is a kid silk mohair, both in her signature mauve colourway Woolen Vine number 9, which is stunning. I did not think I was a pink person. I saw these colours, I had to buy them, I had to knit this sweater, and I fell in love with it the moment I finished it. But the great thing about this sweater is it is a really, really simple, straightforward knit. It is simple raglan. The whole joy of it comes from holding these beautiful yarns together. And so when it comes to thinking about travel knitting for Rhinebeck, I decided that actually what I really wanted was another one of these cast on the needles and underway. So I was thinking about this. I was thinking about sorts of things that are maybe missing from my wardrobe, the sorts of things I really wanted to knit. And so what I hit on was that I wanted to be a complete and utter masochist, because I decided what would be a really good idea if I was travelling and in and out of all these places and on, you know, kind of semi-dark plains, was that I really wanted to knit something in black holding 2 yarns double. Yeah, so what I have here is one of the 2 yarns. So this will be the yarn that I use as the main base, and again, this is Hey Sister Yarn Co. You'll recognise the label from earlier, in their Geronimo sock base. So again, the 80-20 merino nylon, fingering weight, in their noir colourway. And this is just the most beautiful tonal black, where there is just these subtle bits of variegation, and just, it's so rich and so dark without being flat. And so what I'm hoping is, as well as this, I have some other yarn that's coming to me in the post at the moment, and that yarn is coming from Das Mondschaf, which is a German-based indie dyer, who I will pop the yarn that I have bought on the screen here, image obviously courtesy of her and her web store, and you'll see what I'm going for. So in holding together this beautiful dark rainbow colour, so the colourway as I want to believe, what I'm hoping for in taking it with the black is to get this kind of oil slick luminescent effect. And so rather than it being just kind of flat and black or very tonal, I'm looking for something that is kind of slightly iridescent. That's my hope. So when that comes, I'll do a little bit of a, I was about to say I'll swatch. I've already told you I'm not going to do that. I will cast it on, I will start it, and I will see how I get on. But hopefully I'll have something to share once that has arrived and get it underway before I take it off as my travel knitting to, I don't know. So very, very excited about my next no frills pullover. But that is not the only no frills pullover that I have planned. Because when I get obsessed, I do not go in half-heartedly. So, in addition to the black version and the mauve version that I already have, I'm planning a third. How could I not? Let me hold these round the right way so you can actually see what I'm doing here. So yes, I have another skein, three skeins of Wool and Vine in her Volca base, which is her MCN, and if you can see how fluffy and beautiful and gorgeous, and the halo that is on that, it is just, oh, her Volca base is one of my absolute favourites. And this is the Solstice colourway, so again you can see it's kind of this natural cream with the taupey piece in there. It has these gorgeous kind of navy blue flecks and speckles, and it's just stunning. And what I'm looking to do is just have a mohair yarn alongside it. So this is Isiger in their silk mohair. This is the 3M. Let me hold it here so you can actually see. This is the 3M colourway, which is a sort of lovely smoky grey. And what this is intended to do is really just to try and soften the colour transitions in the Wool and Vine yarn skein. So try and make sure that when it's moving between the taupe and the cream, or the speckles are there, just that it's going to soften it up and make it look a little bit more consistent over the sweater as a whole. I'm certainly not looking to make it more kind of neutral, but hopefully just make it a little softer, both in texture and in colour palette. So yeah, that'll be the third of these sweaters. I really don't do things by halves. It is a fabulous pattern though, I really love it. So yeah. So the very last piece of Vicarious knitting I have this time round is from the new Lane magazine. This is issue 6, which, as I mentioned, came out just a few days ago, but there are so many gorgeous patterns in here, it's difficult to choose just one. What I will say though is the one that I do just have my heart set on is stunning. So this is Poet by Sari Nordlund, and it is the most stunning lace jumper. So it is a lace panel on front and back, stockinette sleeves, and it's just stunning. So it's slightly boxy in its shape. It has, let me just pop this up here for you to see, these 3/4 length sleeves, and as I mentioned, the kind of gorgeous lace panel here in the front. What I will say, it's definitely going to be a labour of love. It's definitely going to be something that's quite, I guess, kind of, I will need to be quite present when I'm knitting it, because I've had a quick look at the charts and they are significant. There's definitely going to be a little bit of kind of attention span that's needed to work through these, but I'm intending to knit it. I'm intending to knit it in the recommended yarn, which is Tuku wool in the fingering weight, but I have a sweater's quantity here of Uho, which is their kind of gorgeous mauvey colourway. So if I hold it up here, I'm definitely going to need to sort out how I hold things so you can see them. I am filming on my iPhone as well, which makes things a little bit more complicated, but it is this gorgeous kind of mauvey colour with a slight kind of almost like a grey tone over the top of it, and again, a little bit crunchy, a little bit rustic, but it will soften up beautifully once it washes. And so I have a sweater's quantity of this. I will be casting on Poet at some point, but it's going to need a little bit of attention and focus, and things that maybe in the next few weeks are going to be a little bit thin on the ground. So this might marinate for a little while, just until I'm ready to cast on, but it's such a beautiful sweater. I think it has to be a cast on at some point. So yeah, Poet. So that's it for Vicarious knitting this episode, and rather than this just being a thing where I talk at you for a while, what I would really love is if we made this more of a conversation. So I would love it if we were able to use the platforms like Instagram, like Ravelry, to start sharing some of the things that you want to knit vicariously. Maybe you've been at a festival over the weekend. I know that Yarndale was on here in the UK, and there was Knit City over in Vancouver. Perhaps you found some yarn there that you're desperate to cast on, but you're not quite able to just yet. Or maybe you've got some yarn that you don't really know what to do with, and you're looking for some inspiration, some help there. Whatever it is, I would really, really love it if you were to use the Knitting Vicariously hashtag, which I'll pop on screen here, just to be able to draw our attention to it. And frankly, I'm just really fucking nosy. I would really love to have a little peek and see what you're looking to knit and get some inspiration and share some of my own if you'd like it. And really what it means is that we can start just sharing the joy that comes from seeing all that potential. But a couple of things to remember about Instagram is obviously the hashtag will only work on posts that you make yourself. So you can't just go into the comments section on someone else's post and put knitting vicariously. It will only work in terms of showing as a hashtag on the posts that you yourself create. Similarly, if you're looking to perhaps cross-post or signal boost someone else's, so taking something that a designer's done and maybe reposting it, I really would recommend that you look at using something like the Repost app to be able to do that, and that way you can be fairly certain that you're including both their original comments and obviously giving them credit for both the design or the image as well. Last thing I want is for us, any of us, to get into kind of difficult circumstances with regards to intellectual property, and it's just about making sure that credit is accurately given where it's due. So that would be for Instagram. For Ravelry, I would love to see us posting in the Ravelry group, which I guess I will set up. So it'll be the Knitting Vicariously Ravelry group, and we'll use that as an opportunity again just to share inspiration, to share projects, to share things that you are working on, that you'd like to be working on, that you are desperate to work on but can't quite get there, or perhaps something that someone else has worked on that you just think is fantastic and you want to be able to showcase it to the community. And by community at the moment, I mean me, but hopefully, eventually, there may be more of us. If you are still here, and thank you so much to those of you who are, and also hi mum, I really, really appreciate it. There are so many knitting podcasts out there, and a lot of them are a lot less rough than this one. Almost all of them, I would hasten to add. So if you have got through all of this, I really, really do appreciate it. This is something that I've really wanted to do for quite a long time. I talked a bit about being brave and kind of embracing new things, and this is something that definitely felt part of that to-do list for this year, if you like. And so it is something that I'm learning at. It's something that I want to get better at. And so if you do have comments or thoughts around anything to do with the production of the podcasts or content that's in here, I would love to hear your thoughts, your questions in the comments section below. And what I will say though is I'm predominantly doing this for fun, and so if your feedback is around me doing things in a way that is significantly different or that ultimately doesn't really feel very authentic, I hope you'll forgive me, but it's probably not something that I'm going to look at doing going forward, because it probably wouldn't be fun for me if I were pretending to be someone different from who I actually am. Although actually, in fairness, if I could choose, I would go like lithe, olive-skinned, Mediterranean, just bombshell badass woman who runs her own business and kicks ass and takes names, and like, I mean, let's face it, like the knitting content would be pretty minimal, right? But oh, it'd be cool. Yeah. Chances fairly slim. So yeah, thank you again for watching. If you do contribute, and I would love you to do so, please do reach out to me on Instagram, on Ravelry, with the hashtag, and I'd love to have a chat. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of day, rest of week. I hope your knitting makes you happy and fulfilled, and if it doesn't, I hope you're able to knit vicariously. And yeah, keep on keeping on, and I will speak to you next time. Bye. Early on in the year, I decided I am garbling so much garbling. Seriously? Why do you hate the rest of my hair? What is wrong with you? Why are you so antisocial? It kind of works for me. I'm able to talk rubbish, clearly. Seriously? Why? Why do you hate it? Attractive. I'm now going to move along to some vicarious knitting. Help if I could remember the word that I'm supposed to say there, given it is the name of the podcast. How do people do this without their whole bloody houses turning into fucking Armageddon? They're shit everywhere. I mean, not shit, but stuff everywhere. So essentially I did a really good job of really not swearing too much in all of that, and I'm just going to have all the swears come out now. So here we have Lane Asgazine? No. Mais non. Pas du tout. Oh, hydration is important. I mean, water would have been a better shout than gin now, to be fair, but... Hello, it's me again. I promise I'm so nearly done, but I really just needed to stop in and prove a point. How am I 35 and I cannot get this shit right? I shouldn't be allowed to be an adult. This is ridiculous.